$10,000. That is the asking price on a house in Toledo, Ohio right now. Somebody already bought it. In June of 2026, they paid $19,000 for it. Less than 2 months later, it was back on the market at $10,000. They looked at what they bought and they took a $9,000 loss to walk away from it. That house is on this list. It is the last one I'm going to show you, and it is the cheapest. Today, we are looking at 12 houses across Ohio. Every one of them is active. Every one of them is asking $20,000 or less. Toledo, Cleveland, Lima, Steubenville, Portsmouth, East Liverpool. Real cities with real jobs and real people, and houses priced like used cars. Here is what nobody in this corner of the internet will tell you. At $20,000, the purchase price is the smallest number in the deal. It is not the important number. It is barely a rounding error against what comes next. So I'm not just going to read you 12 listings. On every single one, I am going to run the number that actually decides whether you make money or lose it. Purchase price plus the honest repair range against what a finished house in that specific city is actually worth. Census data, county parcel records, real median values. On most of these, that math goes somewhere ugly. On one of them, it goes somewhere very good, and on one of them, it depends entirely on a decision you might not get to make. Subscribe if you want more of this, because nobody else is running these numbers. Before we start, one thing you need to hold on to. Repair estimates are not bids. Nobody can price a rehab from a listing photo. What I am giving you are ranges, and the low end of every range assumes landlord-grade work, durable, functional, rentable. The high end assumes a full code-compliant gut down to the studs. That gap is enormous, and on several of these houses, it is the entire difference between a deal and a disaster. We start in eastern Ohio, in a town most people have never heard of. 12 Center Street in Barton, Ohio, $12,000. The mailing address says St. Clairsville, but the house is in Barton, and that distinction matters more than it sounds. St. Clairsville proper has a median household income of about $76,000 and a poverty rate near 12%. Those are solid numbers. They are probably not this house's numbers. What you get is a Victorian built in 1914. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, frame construction, crawl space, asphalt shingle roof, electric and gas heat, no cooling, public water, and a private septic system. Annual taxes were listed around $326, which is $27 a month. That is nothing. There are 2 parcels here, 6600307 and 6600308. Verify that both actually transfer with the sale, and verify whether the second one carries its own tax bill. That is a 5-minute phone call to Belmont County, and it can save you a genuine headache. The listing does not report square footage. That is a real problem, because you cannot price a rehab without it, and you cannot pull comparable sales without it either. Repair range on a house like this runs $45,000 to $100,000. Septic is the wild card. Inspection is about $500, and a replacement can add $15,000 to $25,000 on its own. Walk score here is 4 out of 100. You are driving everywhere for everything forever. That is the baseline. Now we head west to a house smaller than most apartments. 11 South Sugar Street in Lima, Ohio. $19,900. 720 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a single-story ranch built in 1920. Block foundation, no basement, detached 1-car garage. It sits on about 1/3 of an acre, which for the price is genuinely generous. Here's the thing about 720 square feet. It is the single best cost control feature on this entire list. Rehab is priced per square foot, so a small house has a hard ceiling on how expensive it can get. Repair range lands at $45,000 to $85,000, which is the tightest spread of anything we're looking at today. Now the trap. The listing mentions that a separate 1.81 acres behind the property may be available. Maybe. Do not put a dollar of that land into your valuation unless the parcel number is written into the purchase contract. I have watched people buy a house believing land came with it. It did not. Lima's median household income is $46,240. Poverty rate is roughly 24%. Median gross rent is $903. The listing showed a rent estimate of $1,086 a month, and I want you to be skeptical of that on a two-bedroom this small. Verify it against houses that actually leased in that zip code. Small house, low ceiling on the damage. Now let's talk about a house whose sale history should stop you cold. 10 Lincoln Avenue in Steubenville, Ohio. $15,000. 1,537 square feet. 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, 2 stories, built in 1916. Full unfinished basement, wood siding, metal roof. Taxes are about $195 a year, $16 a month. That is the lowest carry cost on this list by a wide margin. $10 per square foot. On paper, it is one of the better raw deals here. Then you pull the sale history. This house sold for $4,000, then it sold again for $8,000 in 2021. Now it's asking $15,000. Read that carefully because it tells you something specific. A house that trades at $4,000 and then $8,000 is not a house in a normal market. Those are the prices of a property that keeps changing hands between people who buy it, look at it properly, and get out. The pattern is the information. Only 4 listing photos were posted. 4. On a 1916 build marketed as a handyman special. Everything you actually need to see is not being shown to you, and you should assume that is deliberate. The schools nearby are the strongest on this list at 7 out of 10 and 10 out of 10. That is a genuine positive, but walk score is 9, and Steubenville's poverty rate is nearly 27%. Repair range runs $60,000 to $125,000. Now let's look at a listing that is 1 day old and already missing the numbers that matter. 9. Sophia Street in East Liverpool, Ohio. $12,000. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, built in 1924 on a small lot. Marketed openly as a fixer-upper. Taxes were estimated near $276 a year. 3 bedrooms and 2 full bathrooms at $12,000 sounds like the best ratio on this list. It might be. I cannot tell you because the listing does not report living area at all, and it posted 6 photographs. That is the entire problem. Without square footage, you cannot budget a rehab, you cannot pull comps, and you cannot underwrite anything. Any contractor pricing this from a desk is guessing. The scope has to come from an on-site walkthrough, or the number is fiction. Repair range is $50,000 to $100,000, and I want to be honest that the confidence interval on that is wide. Now, East Liverpool itself. Median household income is $34,009. Poverty rate is nearly 33%. Median gross rent is $785. Median owner-occupied home value is $81,300. Hold on to that $81,300. It becomes very important a few houses from now. Now to Toledo, and a house that tells you exactly what it needs. 8. Palmer Street in Toledo, Ohio. $14,900. 896 square feet. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, built in 1903. Crawl space, no basement. Forced air natural gas heat. Detached 1-car garage with alley access. Taxes are about $505 a year, or $42 a month. Credit where it is due, this listing says a complete rehab is needed. No games, no blank canvas language. It tells you. Walk score is 59, which is the second best in this group. In a city, walkability is real money because it widens your tenant pool to people without reliable cars. 2 warnings. First, the listing shows electricity, gas, water, and sewer as available. Available is not connected, and connected is not code compliant. Those are 3 different conditions, and only one of them is free. Second, inspect that detached garage as its own line item. A collapsing garage is a demolition bill, not a bonus. Repair range is $65,000 to $125,000. Rent estimate showed $927 a month. Take the midpoint of that repair range, and the return looks nothing like what the $14,900 sticker implies. Now the second Lima house, and a sale price from 2009 that I keep coming back to. 7 East High Street in Lima, Ohio, $19,900, 1,354 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, built in 1920, frame construction, partially finished basement, baseboard heat, about a quarter acre. Taxes in 2024 ran around $650. The last recorded public sale was $2,000 in 2009. $2,000. That does not tell you what the house is today, and I want to be careful there. 17 years is a long time, but it tells you this property has been through distress before, and property that has been through distress once tends to carry the scars in places you do not see from the street. The tax history on this one looked volatile, and that is worth chasing. Pull the current Allen County statement and specifically check for delinquencies, liens, and special assessments. In Ohio, those follow the property, not the seller. You inherit them at closing. Repair range is $55,000 to $110,000. The listing rent estimate was $1,175 a month against a citywide median gross rent of $903, screening figure only. Now, before we get to the strangest one, remember that $10,000 house in Toledo I opened with? Somebody paid $19,000 for it and then took a $9,000 loss to get out 2 months later. The listing tells you why in 4 words, and the repair math on it is the largest number in this entire video. That is house number 1. Stay with me. 6 Blum Street in Toledo, Ohio, $20,000, built in 1877. That is the oldest structure on this list by 23 years. 925 square feet, 1 story, unfinished basement, boiler heat, wood floors, wood siding, block foundation. Taxes are about $541 a year. This one has the worst records of anything here, and I mean that specifically. Zillow's facts say 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The marketing text says 3 bedrooms and 1.5 bathrooms. Those are not the same house. Bedroom count drives legal occupancy, appraisal, and rent, so that discrepancy is not cosmetic. The utility fields contradict each other outright. One field shows public sewer, another says sewer unavailable. Electricity is marked unavailable. Gas and water show as available. A house cannot simultaneously have and not have a sewer connection. Somebody has to go find out which it is, in writing, before money moves. And the price history is its own puzzle. It reportedly sold for $20,000 in September of 2025. It was then listed at $35,000 in January and cut back to $20,000 in July. Someone bought it, tried to make 75%, and the market said no for 6 months straight. An 1877 structure means lead paint, obsolete wiring, and hazardous materials are not risks, they are near certainties. Repair range is $60,000 to $120,000. That is the messiest file on this list. Now let's look at the one that actually works. 5 Ouija Road in Shanside, Ohio, $18,000. I have spent this whole video telling you why cheap houses are cheap. This one is different, and I want to give it a fair hearing. 1,116 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath on about 1/6 of an acre. The listing is new enough that year built, taxes, heating, and foundation were not consistently indexed anywhere, and that is a genuine limitation. But look at Shadside. Village population about 3,387 people. Median household income $54,153. Estimated poverty rate 8.2%. That is the lowest poverty rate on this list by a factor of 3. And the median owner-occupied home value is roughly $143,100. Now run it. $18,000 to buy. Repair range of $45,000 to $100,000, with the possible well and septic contingency on top if the property is outside village services. Call it $66,000 to $121,000 all in. Against a $143,000 median value. That works. At the low end, it works comfortably. At the high end, it still works. This is the only property on this list where the finished house is worth more than the money you put into it under every scenario I ran. The catch is that the information is thin. You need the MLS sheet, the property disclosure, and written confirmation on whether this is public water and sewer or private well and septic, because rural shadeside addresses go both ways, and that answer swings the budget by $30,000. That is the one. Now let's look at a listing that is telling you something that is not true. 4. Maybert Road in Portsmouth, Ohio. $20,000, 1,232 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, built in 1925, 2 stories, unfinished basement, natural gas heat, taxes around $600 a year. It is currently tenant occupied with 24 to 48 hours requested for showings. The listing shows a rent estimate of $1,558 a month. Portsmouth's actual median gross rent is $747. That estimate is more than double what the typical rented home in that city commands. I am not going to tell you the tenant in there is not paying more than median because I do not know. What I am telling you is that an automated estimate is not a lease, and the difference between those two numbers is the difference between a great deal and a bad one. Get the lease, get the rent ledger, get proof of what has actually been collected for the last 12 months. The listing also uses the phrase instant equity. That is marketing language. It is not valuation evidence, and it never has been. 2 more things. The exterior material is identified as asbestos. Undisturbed asbestos siding is often fine and can stay. Disturb it during a renovation and you have triggered abatement, which runs $2,000 to $10,000 for testing and limited encapsulation, and $10,000 to $30,000 or more if it goes wide. And Portsmouth's population is about 17,282, down roughly 5% from its 2020 base, with a poverty rate over 35%. That is the weakest set of demographics on this list. Now we get to the 3 where the math stops working entirely. 3. Minerva Street in East Liverpool, Ohio. $20,000, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, built in 1900, 2-story Victorian with a basement, a fireplace, forced air gas heat, wood siding, and a block foundation. The narrative says over 1,300 square feet. It was listed in July at $27,999 and cut to $20,000 within 19 days. Walk score is 72, the highest in this entire video. That is a real asset. Now the number. Repair range is $70,000 to $135,000. Add the purchase price and closing costs, and you are all in between $93,000 and $158,000. East Liverpool's median owner-occupied home value is $81,300. That is the number I asked you to hold on to. Even at the cheapest possible outcome, on the most optimistic repair estimate, you have spent $93,000 to own a house in a city where the typical house is worth $81,000. There is no version of a full renovation here that ends above water. The math is not close, unless you go landlord-grade. Strip the scope to durable and functional, come in near the bottom of the range, and it gets survivable. That decision is the whole deal. not the $20,000 price. Now, Cleveland, where the same problem shows up in a bigger city. 2. Elk Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio, $15,000. Glenville neighborhood, brick Cape Cod built in 1910, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, roughly 1,008 square feet, full basement, forced air gas heat. Taxes are about $1,070 a year, which is $89 a month, and the highest carry cost on this list. Listed on the 24th of July and cut to $15,000 on the 3rd of August. 10 days. The location is legitimately strong. University Circle, the Cleveland Clinic, Case Western Reserve University, the Veterans Affairs Hospital, and Interstate 90 are all reachable. That is real employment density. 2 problems. First, the listing advertises 2-family zoning. The property record classifies the building as single-family. Those cannot both be true, and the one that governs is the property record. A duplex conversion is upside, not a fact. Underwrite this as a single-family house and treat the second unit as a maybe after you've written zoning confirmation in your hand. Second, the listing says a full interior gut is required. Full gut is the expensive road, and once you are on it, you are pricing at code compliance, not at landlord grade. Repair range is $90,000 to $170,000. All in, $108,000 to $188,000. Cleveland's median owner-occupied home value is $102,000. Underwater at the cheapest possible outcome, again. One more thing specific to Cleveland, and it's worth knowing. The city does not require a point-of-sale inspection, but it does require a certificate of disclosure on residential property. And every vacant structure in the city has to be registered. Skip that registration and you are looking at legal prosecution or a $200 civil ticket. Several inner-ring suburbs nearby do run full point-of-sale inspection programs with escrow requirements, so if you go shopping outside city limits, that changes. And now the one I promised you. 1. Lorraine Street in Toledo, Ohio, $10,000, 1,236 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 1 full bath. Built in 1893, hardwood flooring, basement, wood siding, shingle roof, public water and sewer. Taxes are modest. Cash only. $10,000, roughly $8 per square foot. It is the cheapest thing here by $5,000, and it has more bedrooms than most of what we have looked at. Here's what the listing says. Fire damage. That's the whole story, and it is why somebody paid $19,000 for this house in June of 2026 and had it back on the market at $10,000 less than 2 months later. They took a $9,000 loss, and I would bet everything that they took it after a structural engineer walked the property. Fire is not a cosmetic event. It moves through framing, wiring, plumbing, and roof structure. Smoke contamination gets into every porous surface in the building, and the water used to put the fire out does its own damage to everything the flames missed. You are not repairing a house. You are deciding whether enough of a house remains to build on. The numbers. Fire remediation, demolition and testing, $15,000 to $35,000. Structural, framing, and roof, $20,000 to $50,000. Electrical, plumbing, heating, and service reconnection, $30,000 to $55,000. Interior rebuild, $40,000 to $70,000. Total repair range, $120,000 to $220,000. All in, $133,000 to $233,000. Toledo's median owner-occupied home value is $114,500. So on the $10,000 house, the cheapest realistic path to a finished, insurable, code-compliant home costs you $133,000 in a city where the typical house is worth $114,500. You are $19,000 underwater before anything goes wrong. And on a fire property, things go wrong. The listing's automated value estimate showed $46,900 with a range up to $68,000. Ignore it completely. Those models price houses, not fire scenes. That is why it's $10,000. That is why the last buyer ran. And that is the answer to the question this entire video is built on. 12 houses, every one of them under $20,000. Every one of them real, active, and sitting there right now. Here is what the numbers actually said. On 3 of them, the money you have to put in exceeds what the finished house is worth in that city, even at the cheapest honest estimate. On most of the rest, it lands close enough that the outcome depends entirely on whether you were forced into a code-compliant gut or allowed to do durable landlord-grade work. On exactly one, Shadyside, it works under every scenario I ran. The purchase price told you almost nothing. It was the smallest number in every single deal. So here is the question. If you had $80,000 to spend, all in, would you take the $18,000 house in Shadyside, where the math works but you barely know anything about it, or the $15,000 brick house in Cleveland with the hospitals and the university nearby and a rebuild that starts at $90,000? Pick one. Tell me why in the comments. I read all of them. Subscribe. We're doing more of these.